together while we work and talk. So this is really one of my most favorite meetings of the year, and I'm glad that everybody's here. So if you're still eating, please continue to do so, because in a few minutes I'm going to go get my second round, and I hope you will too. I understand that the banana pudding is no good. However, the gentleman who told me that did everything but lick his plate clean. So, I'll not mention any names.
I will sacrifice myself.
I'll not mention any names, but his initials are Roland Toscano. If you see him leaving with the rest of the pudding after the meeting, you'll know it. So, with that, I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Let the record show that all members of the trustees are present, and we will move on to prayer and pledge.
Bow your head for prayer, please. And Lord, we thank you for all that you give us each and every day. Please help us appreciate all that we have and allow us to do best for you and for our community and for our students. Give us wisdom, give us vision, give us guidance to do what's best. Please bless the food we already partake in. In your name we pray.
Good save. Good save. Good idea. Good thought, don't you? Always. Never late, you know. Better late than never.
Visualize the flag.
That flag, but
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Español, por favor.
Go ahead. I'll wait.
we're in trouble.
I'll wait for it.
All right. We do have one action agenda item this evening, third-party administrator services for employee benefits program. Just got on, please.
Yes, sir. Trustees, one of the goals of the benefits department is to make sure that employees have a user-friendly interface for enrollment purposes as well as the administration of their personal benefits program. The Affordable Care Act, as well as some new requirements from TRS Active Care, have made that increasingly complex, and we experienced an unprecedented number of or an unprecedented amount of difficulty in the enrollment process in particular. And so we felt like it was time for us to entertain the option of third-party administration services. So staff has been reviewing proposals for that, and Mr. Selby is going to give you guys an overview of where we're at.
Yes, sir. As Mr. Toscano indicated, we did have a number of challenges in this last enrollment process, and it's not just the staff, the employees had to go through a fairly extensive enrollment process through TRS Active Care that required a lot of patience on their part and everybody else's. It didn't go as well as we would like. We have submitted concerns to TRS, to the executive director and to the board of trustees for TRS, and we have gotten pretty good responses from TRS and Aetna, who's the third-party administrator for that program, and Well Systems, which is the administrator for Aetna, which seems to be the source of a lot of the challenges. And so we are working through with them to try to address that. But even with that, based on our conversations, they're going to address some of the problems, but fundamentally will still be a very long and complex process through their enrollment portal that they use. That, along with the fact that we are trying to expand the opportunity for employees to have an easier access to information about our insurance products and their own coverages and what they have and how much it costs them. The reality is that the best way to do that in today's world is through an online portal, and it's really only cost effective if you do that through a third-party administrator. And so as a result of that, we did go out and we reviewed third-party administration, or often referred to as TPA services, from 5 different vendors. One was First Financial, the other was Ritterhouse and Associates. The third was TASB Benefits. The third was TCG, and the fourth, I can count. And the fifth was TWBC, excuse me, SWBC.
You can read.
I can do it. The staff not only just looked at the information, their proposals, but each one of these companies had an opportunity to present, give presentations on how the product worked, giving demonstrations on how those products work, and quite an extensive process, which is part of why we asked to extend the action by the board and presentation to the board to tonight instead of last Thursday. After extensive review and through a matrix that we used, we found that the staff unanimously felt like First Financial Group of America had the best product and had the longest term experience for providing these services. And the services would be such that once they're set up, that all the information we have on our payroll system as far as demographics, the products that they're currently enrolled with, would automatically be populated into the program. So after the employee sets up their account, which probably will be one of the bigger obstacles for most of them, that and remembering what their username and password is. But once they can learn to write those things down and get into it, they'll actually be able to see everything that they have currently on the system. When it's time to enroll, they'll be able to decide, yes, I want to keep the same top coverage, or no, I want to change, or I want to decline any of these policies. If they're not sure what all is involved in that product, they'll be able to hit a link. It'll go to the information from that company and that product to give them direct information on that. And it'll even have some basic general definitions so that they understand what, like a PPO, what does that mean, type of thing. And so all of those services will be a great benefit to the employee. Once they get done picking out what they'd like, they actually have the equivalent to a cart like in Amazon, where it will tell you what you chose and how much it's going to cost you per month. And so we feel like that will also help them. So on the employee side, it'll be a great benefit. On the district side, the administration of the plans we feel will be much improved as well, because a lot of the things that we're doing manually now, or having to create our own spreadsheets, will be done through programs within the TPA software package. We'll be able to track those. We'll be able to do reconciliation in our billing much easier. We'll be able to compare who has and hasn't enrolled much easier than having to do multiple spreadsheets like we had to do this year. And we do believe that if we didn't go to this, we'd probably have to add personnel, because the time involved in all this is just getting greater and greater. By going to one of these services, it won't be a cost to the district, because the company that we go with will get the commission off of the insurance products, and that will help cover the cost of that service. So based on all of those things, what we felt was that First Financial had a great deal of experience doing this. Is primarily what they do. They had a good track record from all the references we checked, and that they provided a very clear and understandable presentation on how their product worked. It was very difficult because we had some other folks that were very good, and for example, the Ritterhouse department was in, or company was in there, and they were close, but we felt strongly that this was a better product. And as a result, that staff is recommending for us to go with First Financial Group of America for third-party services, and as part of that, to join the Texas Education Employers Benefit Cooperative, which is part of the interlocal participation agreement that we would enter into for those services. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. And Shannon Burns is here. She's led this process, she and her staff, and if I can't answer them, I'm sure she can.
Let me ask you one question here, Mr. Shelby, or whoever can address that. Is cafeteria plan including a more flexible spending
Yes.
program?
What is that? That's good, good
What do you
question. Under the IRS Code 125, you can, if you participate in that, and we do, we have what's called a premium-only plan right now. You can take the premiums that qualify, such as your health insurance premium, put that on the cafeteria plan, and that will reduce your tax liability by that amount. So for example, if your premium was $500 a month, you would actually reduce the amount of taxable income you had to pay taxes on by $500 each month, or $6,000 a year. What you can add to that is a program called a flexible spending account. And what that does is allow the employee that wants to participate in that to identify costs for medical care, such as going to the doctor, dental, vision, and things along that line. And if you dedicate so much money per month, which reduces your tax liability again, so let's just say you go to $2,000 a year, you would take so much money per month, and that would be taken out of your paycheck, and at the end of the year, you can use up to $2,000, that's basically tax-free.
Okay.
And that's called a flexible spending account because it's flexible and where you can use it as far as the type of services that are medically related services for that program.
Yeah, I had an idea about that cafeteria plan, but I wasn't familiar with this flexible spending program. This is something that's been added lately.
Well, it's something we haven't had. It's been around for quite a while, but we've never used it. And that's part of why we would go to it. We didn't have that is that if you wanted to use a flexible spending account, that takes somebody that knows a lot about that and has the time to track all that information. We would have definitely had to add staff for that. So we didn't add that because of that, but it's a great benefit to employees because it's like a tax-free 1-year savings program for covering medical costs.
Thank you.
But you have to use it by the end of the year or you lose it.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir. So that's something that you have to be aware of.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Did I do good, Shannon?
Yes, that was perfect.
Okay, Jim, I have 2 questions for you. Did you explore an HSA instead of the FSA?
We have HSA already
Oh, you do?
for employees that have the high deductible
Okay,
plan.
fine.
That's something that can or doesn't have to go in the cafeteria
Yeah,
plan.
yeah.
So we have that already. We will look at that possibly wrapped into this if it gives us a better, if it costs employees less per month to participate.
Well, the advantage is you don't lose it at the end of the year.
Yes, sir, and that stays with you for forever.
Yeah.
Even if you go to a high deductible, a low deductible plan later on, you can still use it as long as you put that money in there during the qualifying period.
Okay. Also, is our third-party administrator going to be taking care of all of the regulatory requirements for the Affordable Care Act, the 1095C and all that stuff?
No, they won't be doing that, but our online enrollment portal system is going to make it much easier for us to collect the data that's needed for the 1095 reporting.
Is it an option that they had or for an additional
That
cost?
would be for an additional cost, yes.
And we can explore that. We actually paid somebody to help us with that this time.
Yeah, 'cause that's...
Didn't do the greatest
that's
job in the world, so we'll look at it again. And it probably will end up paying, probably these guys some money to do it.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how well they do on this first, then we'll have some time to work towards that.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
Mr. President, I recommend board approval of First Financial Group of America for third-party administration services of the district's employee benefits program. I further recommend approval of the district entering into an interlocal participation agreement with Texas Educational Employers Benefit Cooperative.
All right, we have a recommendation from the superintendent to accept the third-party administrator services as presented. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Garza. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Barrientos. Any questions, comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, now, the main reason that we're here this evening is our board goal setting and team building workshop. So, Mr. Cook, please.
All right, trustees, what we thought we would start with is kind of a shell, and in your packet, you have a shell of our board goal, your board goal, and our 3 performance objective categories, which you're very familiar with: academics, climate, culture, as well as finance. And so what I felt we would start with is to have staff kind of go through each of these and just talk about why. I'll explain a little bit about what it is in terms of our work and why we're doing it, and of course in a very concise and easy to understand manner for all of us. And I thought that then that would trigger some conversation about what of this work you guys feel we need to continue pushing forward, and what you guys feel like we may want to add or consider adding for next year. So our first area is academic learning. And I'd like to ask Jonathan, and does everybody know Jonathan Holbert? You know, yeah. So Jonathan is moving into a new role next year. He's a tremendous asset for the district. He used to be called data guy, but he's grown up. And he's much more than data guy. But in terms of data analytics, which is a highly sought after position in any organization, in any industry, this guy's our guru. He's our resident expert. So he's going to be a director of transformation and school improvement next year. And he's going to oversee all things assessment, data, school improvement, continuous growth. I mean, this is the guy. So with that, Jonathan, time for you to talk to us. I mean, super data. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about what we mean by growth, which we're all very familiar with, but kind of what we do and why we do it.
So I think best with my computer, so I could talk about digital immigrants and natives, so forgive me, I'm going to come over and plug in and use my brain here. As I was setting up some of the numbers and things on it, and I apologize to the front row, I guess it'll be a little harder to see them.
Well, while Jonathan's getting set up, Mr. Selby, if you want to talk a little bit about safety and security a little bit.
That was good.
It's on the organization chart.
I should have read that.
It's Melody's current title.
Title? Really? Wow. All right, I'm sorry. Safety and security. Yes, we continue to expand the number of cameras. I think we talked about this earlier a little bit. We have continued to expand the number of cameras that we have in the district. We've developed some criteria for, what would qualify for the need of those cameras, such as obviously entrances and exits, and something that monitored where people are going in and out of restrooms, high traffic areas where there have been potential issues and things like that. And so we have over 300 plus cameras now throughout the district. And so we pretty well put most of where we need cameras. There will always be some isolated needs here and there. But what we'll be doing now is really maintaining those cameras, replacing the replacement cameras that we're buying. The quality of those, the image quality and what you're able to do with those is just better every year. And the price, if it doesn't go down, at least stabilizes for a better product. And so we're excited about that. We have staff committed to monitoring those cameras and supporting them. And so that program has been, I believe, very successful. In the basically the access control and lock systems, if you recall, 3 years ago we had a goal of transforming or moving all of our lock systems into a unified system that were designed in such a way that you have control over the blanks. It's not a common blank that you can just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and get copied. And so it's a little bit higher security level of lock. The quality of locks and hardware are better than what we've had. And so that transformation or that program is going to be finalized this year with completing the switch out of locks at the high school and transportation maintenance and a few other areas of that. in the area over by the high school. So that program is going to be reaching completion. We're going to continue to look at electronic access control as an increased level of security for entrance and exits into key doors. And that will allow us to issue that to key personnel instead of keys, and that way if they lose their little card, we just reprogram the access code for that employee and not have to redo all the cores of the lock sets, which is quite timely and expensive. And so we'll be working on that for the next year or so. We have also now have newer radio systems in all the buses, which has tremendously helped improve the communication there and the service that we have. We also have more walkie-talkie radios. They aren't just walkie-talkies, they're a radio at the campuses that has allowed for communication to be greatly improved there. So for example, in our redirection classrooms, they have radios so that if there is an issue that they can get help right away. Or if the teacher is out because they can't be in there every second of the day, if they need to come back for some reason, they can fairly quickly. So those are things that we continue to work towards. So I think that covers a lot of what we had looked at as far as some priorities there. We have all the entrances to all the buildings have now been enhanced in such a way that we can limit access into the core of the buildings at the campuses. And so that's been a great asset. That's really helped an awful lot. We just, little basic things like parents just walking in there and camping out in the classroom without anybody knowing about it. It has other ramifications, but that little, something like that really has helped an awful lot. So those are things that we have completed over the last 3 years.
Mr. Shelby, while we're on this security and emergencies,
Yes.
what kind of training are we providing for the students, like from pre-K on to high school, the importance of making false calls, using 911 calls, and the seriousness of doing this when it's not nothing really happened? Are our kids getting any type of training for that?
Well, that's interesting you would bring that up. As you know, we had an issue with that.
But I still want to know. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I do believe that the campuses do go through that with them. I'm pretty sure we're going to be reinforcing that a great deal within the next, starting today on through the rest of the school year. But that's something that is clearly explained to people that there's issues involving that. I don't think that really is driven home as well as whenever somebody does something like this, which was a very poor decision on that child's part, and with the seriousness and the ramifications. What it does show is that we have tremendous response from our law enforcement community, but you don't want that to be done in a false alarm, because you probably will so many times they quit coming out too.
Yeah, of course, and I think it needs to be started at the pre-K because,
Well, I believe, yeah.
because these kids need to know you just cannot get on there and just
Yes.
make those type of false
And this
accusations. You know?
individual certainly was old enough to know that. It's not like it hadn't been discussed
They hadn't been
by the time they were in
discussed. So
court.
these things are being discussed with them. Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Jonathan, your brain working?
It's all up,
There you go.
all circuits are going, thank you. So I think the first question was, why would we measure for growth? And so the conversation begins with, it's something that's attainable. And so it's something that all the kids can aspire to. It's something, we don't want to set goals for kids that will demoralize them and defeat them. And so some of our kids come in and they're not on level yet, but when you set a goal of growing, then it's something that, and the colors are not quite what I thought they were. I think it'll be okay. It gives them something to aspire to, something to grow. So by measuring for growth, we keep it relevant. It's meaningful to them. It's something that you know, all the kids want to level up. Right? They just want to keep growing and going and keep kind of that video game mentality sometimes, right? About if I can get one more level, I can keep going, I can keep growing with it. So in addition to some of those specific things, with all of our assessments, we like to make them smart, and so we want them to be specific, something that they can really aim for. And so by aiming for 1 or more years worth of growth for all of our kids, we're able to kind of calibrate, and we're able to really get specific about how are we doing, where are we in relation to that goal, and we can measure that goal, and we can say, are we on track to meet the goal? And if we're not, we can make some adjustments. We can say, oh, we're noticing that Johnny's not on track, and so let's have a conversation and see what kind of things we want to do differently in order to get him to our target. And by using those SMART goals, those are time-bound goals. So those are things that we have regular intervals where we can look at and we can see. And so you don't want to get to the end. Shane talks about an autopsy at the end, right? If you wait to the very end to figure out where you are, then you can't do anything about it. And so by having little intervals along the way that we're measuring, we can get a lot clearer and make sure we meet those students' needs. I always like to start with a why and a how, and so kind of to give you some idea of some of the big ideas, we try to spend a lot of time focusing on the big idea. So if you think about, we're trying to get literate problem solvers. So those are really big concepts, and so it helps if we continually talk about our literacy goals with our kids, not a STAR goal so much, and not a campus test goal, and it's not about the instrument you're using, it's about the big idea that we're aiming for. And so if we make really highly literate, great readers, writers, speakers, thinkers, problem solvers, then it'll transcend any assessment we give them. And so it helps us continue to keep the focus on the important work. So along that way, what we want is multiple pieces of data. So the state has that STAR test, and it's an okay test. I mean, it's not something that's a perfect test by any stretch. No test is perfect. But we give the iStation test and the Scholastic Math Inventory, and we do quarterly assessments. And when you put all these tests together, you start to tell a story. And so you start to get more factual information to guide our decisions, to say, well, what do we want to do about that? How are we going to adjust? And so we want that data to be very transparent for everybody to see, and we want to use that to prioritize our work. And so it's not all hunch work. It's not all, well, we think it's working. We want to say, well, based on all of this data together, it's like a preponderance of evidence. Overall, it really tells us a story and indicates this is how it's going, and this is maybe an area we want to focus on. And maybe this is a population that's underperforming, or this is the campus we're more concerned with than another one. And so through that lens, I'm just going to walk you through those 3 academic performance goals. And so I'll take them one at a time. And so that first one's going to talk about every student demonstrating a year or more's worth of growth in literacy and problem solving. And so last year we measured for index 2, and we said that the students they had a score of a 30. And so, well, what does that mean, right? Like, that's a bunch of education jargon. So index 2 is a measure of how much kids grow on the STAR test. And so that's taking the prior year and then the current year and saying what percent of the kids went up, basically. And it's a fancier calculation than that. It's a scale that goes from 0 to 100, but we were at a 30. And on iStation, we had about 67% of kids. So about 2 out of 3 of our kids met the goal on a reading assessment we do in the district. And so that's measuring from the beginning of the year in September to the end of the year in May, what percent of our kids were hitting that target. And then we do the same thing in math. And so we have a Scholastic Math Inventory. And so 52% of our kids in math met that growth target. So we set goals this year to increase by about 5 points. And we said STAR would go up to 35 points, which is about 5% more kids meeting the growth target. And we said 72% of the kids would meet it on iStation and 57% would meet it on SMI. And so the question is, what's our current status? And so right now, as of today, looking at the STAR results we have so far, and it's a very limited set of data. We have the first administration of 5th grade reading and math and 8th grade reading and math. So it's not all of the tests, but it's just a small section of it. But based on that small section so far, our index score would be a 43. And so you can see that would be on track as of today to meet our goal of a 35. And on iStation, it's saying we have 57% on track to meet the goal. And on SMI, we're at about 52%. And so it kind of just shows where we are in comparison to our goals for the year. questions on that first one? I know I said a mouthful there.
So the iStation and the SMI is just in preparation for the STAR test, right?
So that's a great question. So it's not a STAR simulated test. It's they're both.
Well, is that if my little one gets on iStation to read and stuff, so it's just, it helps them.
Yeah, it's so think of the iStation as like a reading test. So what it's really trying to do is dial in on your reading level. So like how do you read in comparison to other kids? And so one of the things it does is it reports it as a percentile rank. And so what that'll say is you're reading higher than blank percent of kids around the country. So because it's a national test, it's a very different way of thinking. So you don't pass iStation or fail iStation. It just shows you where your current levels are. And a great thing about it is it also gives some diagnostic information. So it'll kind of say, maybe you're reading below level, but your fluency is very strong and your vocabulary is an area of concern. So it can kind of help you guide maybe some areas that we want to focus on moving forward. Is that a little bit?
Yes, thank you.
In the time allotted that we have before the end of the year, what do those percentages right there say to you as far as being on track to meet at
So,
this point?
so it's a very different way of framing growth, right? So what I'm saying is from iStation here, from September to March, 57% of kids met the expected amount during that time frame. And so what I'm saying is if things continue at that rate, then in May we'll still be at 57%. And so that says that we're a little below our goal on our reading level.
And the same for the 52%?
So in math, we're at 52%, and so that's a little below our goal of 57%, and it's right about where we were a year ago.
So 57% on track to meet iStation growth for 2015-16. And above, we have the 72% met growth of the iStation.
So the middle one here is our goal.
Oh,
Our
that's
goal
our
is to be
goal.
at 72, and we're sitting at 57. So
That's our goal, so we're,
we're a little below that goal.
okay.
But how did we increase, wait, hold on, I'm gonna just answer my
So-
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so she's, I think the
I get it
confusion
now.
is that STAR, iStation and SMI are not necessarily STAR, but there could be a correlation.
Yes. So on STAR, what we spend, the media spends a lot of time talking about the passing rate, right? So that's just, did you meet the minimum standard on the test or not? And what we're measuring is the percent of kids that made the increase we wanted, the amount of growth we wanted. So one great thing about both of these tools is I grab all the results and I lay them next to each other. And so even 2 years out, I can take an SMI score and I can predict how well a kid's going to do on STAR. So again, it's not about STAR, right? Like it's not about how they're going to do on that test. What I'm saying is, if you're a great reader, it'll show up on iStation. It'll show up on STAR. It'll show up on your assessments. So kids who read above level, they're passing in the 90% range, very high 90s. If you're just on track, it's like low 90s, high 80% success rate. It's once you start getting a little below level that your success rate starts to drop down more and more. And so if we keep our focus on the important work, great readers and writers and thinkers, then those tests will take care of themselves a lot more.
But I guess I'm just sorry. So why isn't the percentage on the current status on the iStation growth higher than, because the points obviously went up, right? The index scores went up.
Yes, great question.
But the percentage is still, we haven't met the percentage. Does that
Yeah,
really?
so I kind of reframe what I think you're asking is, so how come index 2 seems to say that we're growing more, but the other scores don't seem to indicate that?
Right.
So I have a couple of thoughts. So my first thought is it's a small subset so far. So we only looked at 5th and 8th grade. And so 5th and 8th grade, they maybe are a little bit. The other thing is with the state accountability, they set some of the rules, then they give the test, and then they look at the test, and then they change the standards, and they change the rules afterwards. So the state doesn't publish what the deal is up front. So they're playing games with how they set the standard on it. So
Why are they allowed to do that? I mean,
They make the rules.
doesn't answer my question, Mr. President.
So what
You're
you've
right.
developed there is the way of
Like that.
tracking, not so much the passing and all that, but we're tracking
those students that have a tendency to need more growth, we want to know that we are targeting those students.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
we have a couple populations we're concerned with, like our special education population. So throughout the year, if they're not meeting the expected amount of growth, they get pulled, the campuses go through one at a time and talk about every one of those kids and say, what is our plan? What are we doing? How could we increase this amount of growth? Are we missing something? Is there some different services? Or is there some RTI plan? Is there some tutoring? Is there some programming differences? Like, what could we change that would get that student back on track? Because we want every kid to grow.
Right.
And so if we really focus on that growth, we'll make a difference over time. And it's much more achievable in the shorter term. Great question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to jump to number 2 then. So our second goal was to increase the percent of students attaining a level indicating college and career readiness on state assessments by 5%. And so in 2014-15, we had 29% of students achieving at the final standard, and the state defines this final standard as being ready for college. That's literally their definition for it. And so the thing to remember here, kind of translating some of the jargon here of the state stuff, they're phasing STAR in. So all the way in the STAR era up till now, they've had one standard that they said this level is passing. So starting this year and every year until the year 2022, they're defining a higher level to pass. So they're saying every year you have to score a higher scale score. And their scale score, again, they define after the test. They say, we decide that this is the actual level. So it doesn't actually mean anything, and they won't publish that until after they've given the test. So it's defined, so it's difficult to compare their tests to each other. They want you to believe that you can do that, but mathematically it doesn't work. Okay, so we were at 29%, and our goal was to increase that 5%, and so we want to get to 34%. And again, we just have a limited set of data so far, but based on our tests so far, we're at 29% with just looking at 5th and 8th grade. And so it's a limited set of data, but it looks like we're in a very similar position to where we were a year ago.
So the complicated thing here is part of the reason why I asked Jonathan to talk to you guys about this today is so that you can see the moving target that is state assessment, and that it would emphasize why you guys have not put an overemphasis on or premium on the STAR test, but that is one small piece of the bigger puzzle. And so for us, you see iStation, you see SMI, and you see all kinds of information about students that we put together to tell the whole story. And our goal is not for more kids to meet proficiency on STAR. Our goal as a system is for more of our kids to make at least a year's growth as a reader and a thinker and a problem solver. And that's a much more difficult goal to achieve. We could play the state accountability game and we could become a test prep factory and move that needle, but do nothing to improve the quality of our readers and the quality of the thinkers that we have in our organization. And the consequence of doing that is your highest achieving students that are already passing STAR get left behind, which we're not willing to do. And the kids who are two and 3 years behind the STAR standard have no hope, which is what he talked about right off the bat. I'm a 9th grader, but I read like a 4th grader. I can't pass this test. Why even try? But if it's about you and your leveling up and making a year's growth, as a minimum, school means something to you. And the information you're learning about yourself means something. As you're becoming a better reader and a better thinker, all of a sudden as a sidebar, you start doing better on these tests, which tell a very small story. They don't even assess everything that's being taught. The standard is moving all over the place to politically not convey that the state of Texas is failing. So it's a political game. And so that's why this board has embraced this idea about growth, as well as the entire staff in the organization. And so, again, I just wanted to highlight that and remind everybody in the room today about why there's a bigger picture for us and why growth is really the target.
And Taffy's going to be talking some more about college readiness in a minute, so she'll kind of continue some more information on that. So our third goal was about meeting state accountability, and so we're on a small list in Bexar County that has had every campus meet accountability each of the last 2 years. And so we met it last year again, and our goal is to meet accountability and each of the individual indexes. And that's obviously going to be a pending thing. We won't know that until right before school comes out, but they'll publish that whole big chart. But kind of a quick update. I think in mid-year we had a little bit of information on it. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some accountability changes and then update my little chart on campuses. So one of the big changes is that phase-in I talked about earlier. So starting this year and every year until 2022, they're saying the test is going to be a little bit harder to pass. And so even that change, for example, 8th grade reading, you needed a certain number of questions last year. It's the exact same number of questions again this year. So they defined it as a harder test with a harder scale score, but it's actually the exact same number of questions on the same test. So it's something that they move the needle where they want, when they want, how they want. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier, and it doesn't, unless you spend a lot of time looking at it, you don't know to question some of those things. Like, I don't hear a lot of that in the media.
So I want to make a point there. Did you hear what you just said? So sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier, even though they say it might be harder. So for us, as an organization, if we're focusing on percentage of kids that are meeting a year's growth by all these measures that we have, even if the state decided for whatever reason it's an election year, we lower the standard so it looks like a whole bunch of kids in Texas are doing awesome, we're not going to jump up and celebrate unless we got a whole lot more kids growing than last year. So that's a much more important target, if that makes sense. So
Right.
we're not going to get caught in the accountability game and get a false sense of success or a false sense of we're failing. We're going to look at whether kids are truly becoming better readers and thinkers, if we're really having an impact in our school.
And are we, this may be a little premature to ask this question, but all the time I always hear from parents and students, all the time, and I know everyone else does, and teachers, that, oh God, here comes a star, we're just sick, we're sick.
Oh, yeah.
Teachers are sick, kids are sick, parents are sick, my kid's sick, he wants to throw up, and he's got to take, that star's coming, oh good God. So, in focusing on just growth with that philosophy, I would imagine that we, of course I know you don't run around going, oh it's going to get harder, it's going to get harder, but do we being that we're in that philosophy and we're not going to play that game, we don't even bother with telling them it could be harder, or they say that it's going to be harder this time, or we don't advertise that is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so our goal as an organization is to not put an emphasis on it.
Okay.
To do the right thing for kids and let that thing take care of itself. Inevitably, the pressure of a school being IR or and being perceived as failing and getting a D, right, that's published in the paper, does stress teachers out, if you can imagine, and principals. And despite our very best efforts to say just do the right things for kids and let the test take care of itself, we do occasionally have a teacher that says, you guys better sleep, you guys better eat, if you don't do well on this test, you might not get promoted and have to go to summer school, because that's their reaction to, you guys all better do good or I'm going to look like a bad teacher. But in our organization, we kind of frown upon star pep rallies. We're not going to, we frown upon people printing a bunch of shirts that say, knock the lights out of the star, and we're not going to have an overemphasis on.
And as far as any
that.
material distributed anywhere, I mean, it doesn't explain the things that you're talking about right now, does it, anywhere?
I'm not aware of anything from the district that talked about those changes. We're trying to
It changes as far as the assessment,
Yes.
the rules of the game,
Yes,
if
yes,
you will.
yes.
Well, the challenge is we're still learning them, and they're changing still.
I've got a. What determines if the questions are harder? You mentioned it's the same amount of questions on the test. It was easier last year or harder this year. Is it because so many kids passed that test while they changed what they make to make the test much harder the next year, or what? Is it the percentage of so many kids that are passing? If you got 8 questions, they pass all 8 questions. What determines that?
Great question. So they don't advertise how they do it. What they say is, you take the test, and then once they have all the results in, then they start publishing who would pass. So So the actual behind-the-scenes working, they won't tell you how they do it or why they do it. So we can only speculate that it's probably political in terms of what would be an acceptable rate of campuses that would be improvement required, or what maybe would make them. So
if we slide the standard up a little bit, then this many more schools are gonna fail, and this many more kids in Texas, oh, that'll look bad, let's slide it down a little bit, okay, that's a little more palatable. So the pass or fail is arbitrary.
Right.
So that's why they need all the scores to kind of see what the impact in the state will be if we slide the scale up or down in terms of number of schools we're gonna have to go in and support through the agency. Oh God, we don't have enough staff to do that, we better lower the standard a little bit. Or it's an election year, if, 60% of Texas fourth graders failed the reading test, Texas schools are failing. Oh God, we can't do that. Let's lower the standard a little bit. So it literally sounds crazy, but that's the way it's done.
It's kind of just playing games, because look like to me they want the more to fail, and the test is hard, I guess. The more to pass, then it's too easy, so we just.
Kind of, yeah, that's pretty much it.
It just makes you want to get up every day and go to school, doesn't it?
It makes us not want to focus on the test.
Yeah, really.
As much as possible, if we can focus on the important things about growing and being highly literate, then what we found is that has a high correlation to test scores. So it's like the paradox is the less you focus on the test and the more you focus on the learning, that's actually the best way to impact your test scores. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like, by not playing the game and focusing on the learning,
Yeah.
you're actually going to have the best year you can get. And it's the most sustainable, because if you focus on test scores short term, you can boost your test scores that year.
Yeah.
But what happens next year when they're further behind than you thought? It's just harder to achieve it every year, one after another.
Yeah.
So
But I think we've seen in the past in other schools, other places or whatever, where that focus is not on the child and the growth and the learning, but on the test or whatever, and you're all over the place. And who really benefits from that?
Right.
Not really anybody.
Right.
You know, so I'm glad we're understanding all of this. I know it's common to kind of react to numbers, because that's what our society says. You're doing well if you do such and such, or you make this, and those kinds of things. But if we're concentrating on what we're really trying to do here, and that we're really moving forward and making progress with what we're trying to do, and not necessarily in so many numerical terms, then I think we can all be fairly grounded in and try to meet that goal. So.
One thing that has bothered me ever since I came on this board is all these tests and the results, and people can take tests, people cannot take tests. What are we testing? I mean, what is being tested? Is it not the material that is being taught to the students? I mean, are they coming up with Russian and we don't teach Russian here? I mean, is that the way it is? Or are we teaching math and reading and sciences that we are teaching here that is being tested? I mean, what is being tested, if not that which is being taught in the class from September to June?
I think it's more critical thinking, though. I mean.
Well, okay, but the question is that what is being tested? So if that's the case, then it goes back to, he may have mentioned, somebody else may have mentioned, if you teach, then it should be retained and it should be able to test out. Yes, some people tense up on the test, some people don't have a problem with it. But it does not take away from the individual's ability to know. I've heard it many times. I had a teacher say it many years ago, before most of you were born. If you memorize something, you remember it tomorrow. If you learn it, you'll never forget it. There are things that I always said, oh, what the hell am I learning this for? 1963, Abu Ben Ara, may his tribe increase, blah, blah, blah. I can quote that dadgum thing almost verbatim. That was 150 years ago, before you guys were here. I still remember it. Why? Because I was taught the thing. I learned it. If we teach our children to learn to read, to do their maths, to write, the test should, yes, it'd be different. It's like extemporaneous writing. They give you a subject, now write on something. If you haven't researched it, it's hard. But you're not doing extemporaneous writing and speech making. You are taking tests on stuff that is being taught every day in the classroom? Why everybody in the state goes crazy about the STAR and it's so difficult, it's so easy? If the material is being taught and they're not testing on stuff that is not being taught to those grades, you're not testing trig on a 4th grader. That would be
Have you done 5th
difficult.
grade math though lately?
Well,
With the way they're teaching
okay,
them?
okay.
They're not teaching them how to divide like we used
Fine, but
to.
if they're teaching them that, then test that. If that's what they're testing, then where is the failure? If we're failing them, it's in the test in the classroom. The kids are not learning. Because if they're teaching trig, and I'm way behind, I mean, I'm 50 years ago from high school. So if they are teaching trig in the 4th grade, then if the test in 5th grade is trig, guess what, guys? It's not foreign to the individual. If they're teaching them to read, I didn't do nothing, I don't know how. That's improper grammar. If that's what we're teaching them, that's exactly what he's going to test out on that test. But if we teach them proper grammar, then that student should be able to deal with it. Tense up because of a test. Hey, I couldn't speak when I was in school. Somebody reason I wouldn't. But I could not speak when I was in school. I would stutter and stammer because I was a country boy, didn't know how to couldn't speak properly, or at least not comfortably. That, you have to overcome that. And that happens in a test, that happens in a speech. But that's why you take speech. But if you are teaching the material, I don't care how they raise and lower these standards, if you are teaching the material and that's what the state is testing, our kids should be able to deal with it. And somehow, I don't know what it is, and this thing about teaching to the test is, to me, is a waste of time, because if you're teaching the material from the get-go, you shouldn't have a problem. The child should be able to deal with it. Maybe not at the same level as the other guy, because there were some kids in my class that were a hell of a lot better than I was, but I was a little bit better than others. So we all tested according to our knowledge. But it wasn't a foreign test to any of us. And that's the problem I have, and that I've heard all along since STAR came out and all these other acronyms. If we teach the material, the student should be able to rise to the occasion and to his level. Now, if it shows his level being this, then we need to work on that child to get him up to where he should be even with the rest of them. But I don't know, I get lost with this, all these percentages and stuff, because the way the test goes, I mean, the state goes around about telling you whether your kids are worthless, you know, you need remediation and all that. That's a political game. If we teach the children, they should be able to come to it. There are some kids, I have a nephew, at 3 years old, could give you all the states and spell them and give you the capitals and spell them. Hell, I didn't even know where, beyond Texas, I didn't know where the hell was Texas at 3 years old. He could. That's one kid out of a million here in San Antonio. That's the one exception. But the rest of our kids should be able to rise, not totally to the cream level, but right at the fringes of it if they are learning the material. So somehow I get lost, folks. The state's playing the game. They want to be politically correct in producing, when they're not. They just change it to their benefit. But I somehow, again, I'm repeating myself, but if we teach them, they should be doing it. It's like if you build it, they will come. If you teach it, they will learn it. And they will know it. Somehow I get lost somewhere there.
We had a guy named John Tanner that's, he actually wrote some of the tests for different states and worked on some of these key assessments, and he told us a little bit how it works, and he said the key thing is that they want to develop a test that they consider valid. And so what's the key characteristic that makes a test valid? He said, well, you need to develop questions that half of the kids who take it will get it correct and half will get it wrong. And so that's like the gold standard. Well, you want to get a bunch of questions that half the kids get it right and half the kids get it wrong. And so if too many kids are getting the question right, you need to make it a little bit trickier. And so you need to put in some language that makes, so they weed out questions on these state tests that too many kids are getting right, so that so that they can get these 50-50 questions.
But what would be the purpose of going 50-50 if you make it challenging enough and the very, very high percentage get them right? They learned. They're telling you, I learned the dadgum stuff. Why do you want to have a for sure failure? That's ridiculous.
Well, Vic, the answer to that is because the state needs to get kids rank ordered. You can't have all the kids at the top or all the kids at the bottom. You got to create separation. So it's a mathematically designed exam. Content doesn't even matter. So yes, and the theory is if you know what the standards are and you teach those to kids and you actually assess them what's being taught, that should be an indicator of how well they learned and how well you taught. But with this state assessment, the standards are a mile wide. They assess some skills and some information, a very small fraction. They don't tell you which they're going to assess, but you teach them all as you see fit. And we're not going to tell you how we're going to assess it. And the questions that are selected are questions that have been pre-administered that half the population got right and half the population got wrong. Anything other than that, they throw those questions out, and so you got an entire test that half the population's going to get right and half's going to get wrong. And when that test is administered, it doesn't matter if the subject is monkeys or clowns, and it doesn't matter the population you administer it to, you're going to get a nice distribution of ranks. And that's all they want to do is give you information about how your kids compare to other kids like yours on this assessment, so you can tell not how well you taught, not how well your curriculum is, not how smart your kids are, but basically, are there some things in your system you might want to take a look at as opportunities for improvement. But the message that citizens get is that teachers are teaching, the state's testing. If they don't do well, school's no good. They didn't teach them. But that's not this kind of assessment. Now for us, we have assessments in our system that we use to determine, well, he mentioned it, but he didn't put it on the board, but we have common assessments and other kinds of assessments that are actually evaluating what kids are supposed to be taught. Then you know the impact of what you see. So like you mentioned, your son or your grandson knows all his states. Awesome. What if he was tested on types of fishing lures? He wouldn't seem so smart. And that's what happens. You got kids that are brilliant and teachers that have done great work, but they're being assessed on either in a different way or on different content than that kid mastered. And on assessment items that are meant to trick half the kids one way or the other. So it's got a purpose. I'm not saying it doesn't have a purpose, but it's got a very small purpose, and you got to put it in its place. Otherwise, we get trapped thinking we got a good school, a bad school, good teachers, bad teachers, smart kids, not so smart kids, and we're using something that's not meant to tell us that.
You know, when you say there's a child that's not reading at his level,
that's a problem.
That's a problem, and that's the problem that should be attacked.
That's what we're attacking.
Because if the basis or the ground level was shaky, he's not going to make it to the top nail. He's going to fall apart by the time he gets to that last nail on the roof, because his foundation never is any good. I'm preaching to the choir here. You know way better than I do that it starts at home. If the folks don't help you, you have an uphill battle pushing that big old stone up the hill. Because the kids are not going to learn, the kids are not going to dedicate themselves because there is no support from home. And then that same person turn around and complain about you not teaching worth a damn. Well, what are you doing to help? That's the problem. That the parents are not contributing. And you can say, well, I came from, it doesn't matter. You can use any example you want, I came from. It's what you did and then what you've done with yours since then. My parents were uneducated, very, very limited education. But they pushed me to get an education. And I pushed my kids, and I pushed my nieces and nephews. What does that say? That's not a brag, it's just the way it's supposed to be. You can't say, well, because my mom didn't do jack, I'm not going to do it either. It's up to me, it's incumbent on me to get up and go. And it's not for me to complain about this lady not teaching my child. What did I do to help her teach my child? And that's what the parents are. And I shouldn't be talking to you, I should be talking to the parents. Because y'all are the ones that are having to put up with this. And it's, all the tests we give, the only thing that they're gonna say is, well, you ain't teaching them a damn thing. That is not a fact, but it is the contribution from home that is causing a lot of this that we have now.
We do believe that if we do what we're supposed to do in helping kids become better readers and better thinkers, like we said earlier, the consequence is the test will kind of take care of themselves, even though they're designed for a different purpose other than measuring exactly what was taught and what should have been learned. It kind of takes care of itself. And so we've kind of figured out that the most important thing is when we say do the right thing for kids, do kids know and parents know and staff know where kids are and what our next best step is in getting them where they need to be. And that's our goal.
I understand. I have no problem with that. I supported you folks from the get-go, since my kids started school. And I supported the system, the way it's been carried out. It's just that the test, or the state has made it more difficult for you to teach. And yes, you need to be able to identify where that under the level reader and math worker and so on. Yes, you need that. You need to know where the problem child is to work with them. And not as a troublemaker, but a problem in understanding and grasping the material. But I think the state takes a hell of a lot of time from the teaching by trying to assess. And if they keep jacking around with the level, you'll never know exactly what you're playing against. To what level am I going to? What am I aiming for? If you keep moving to the target.
We are hopeful. There's a new commissioner, and he's commissioned a commission on next generation assessments. And but we've been hopeful before. But the bottom line is, I think
you're not going to go home and get the Jesus shot, is it?
Yeah, I don't know what he's going to do.
Not him too, huh?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to ever be fair until each district gets their own particular STAR test. Because each district is teaching different. And they set in these STAR tests for us to be able to say everybody. And for, as he said, the contribution at home, a lot of this homework to come home, the parents can't help them with. Little fourth graders bring math work home. You have no idea. They can't get much contribution at home. Not like when we was coming along, 2 plus 2,
That's my problem. I push my child, and my child struggles.
If the support is there, at least to try to help them, get them some help. I can't. It's hard for a parent to say, I don't know. Oh, I can tell you a story I did with my son. I pulled 20 questions on him, and when he got through, he said, oh, thanks, Dad. I didn't help him a damn bit, but I never told him I didn't until he graduated from college. Then I told him the story. But I hit him with 20 questions. He said, how about this problem? And I took that damn paper and I damn near went like this, I couldn't understand it. But then I said, well, do it this way. You can't do it that way, Dad. Why? Because you got to do this. Oh, that's right. Well, how about, and I kept going, you can't do that. He can't do it. He finally got the answer. I got it, Dad, thank you. I didn't do a damn thing. But I took it out of him. I sucked it out of him by all my stupidity. My stupid questions got him to think, and he answered it himself. If we do that, try to at least give him that kind of support like this. Oh man, my old man can walk on water. Hey man, I was drowning, but I wasn't going to tell him till he graduated. I said, remember that story? Yeah, I did. Yes, I did. But by that time, he'd already learned it. And maybe that's what it takes to not admit you don't know, but to act a fool and go through it. And maybe it's back here. All we have to do is draw it out on them. But how many parents are going to sit there and act a fool and try to get the kid to answer his own questions?
All right, Jonathan, take us to the next level.
I second the motion. got a motion on the floor? Is that on the floor?
Okay, the third and the fourth.
So the first change is that they're going to that higher phase that we talked about, so it's supposedly at a higher level. So the big implication for us is this: if it really gets a little bit harder, then it could cause us to get lower scores on accountability across the board. So if it's a harder test supposedly, and so the real place that I'm watching carefully for that is our elementary campuses, because our elementary campuses don't get a growth score because they only give a third grade test. So they can't get an index 2 score. So you either have to meet index 1 or 2, and if index 1 is a really challenging thing and you don't get an index 2 score, they have to meet that first index. And so it's just something that we're keeping an eye on at our elementary school, saying, okay, it's a little harder, and so we just have to pay a little bit careful attention to it. I'll show you a little bit about the impact in a minute about campuses. Our second factor on accountability is there's a accommodated test, and so this is a test that kids take on the computer that has some built-in prompts and some built-in things to help them to take the test. And last year it didn't factor into the accountability system, and so these kids are factored into the accountability system this year. And so you say, well, what kind of effect does that have? Well, across the state last year, about 77% of kids passed in third grade on reading and math, but if they took star A, the passing rate was 20%. So you can see that you're taking a population that has a lot less success, and you're going to factor them into the equation. You're going to have a lower passing rate. You're going to have some lower scores based on being more inclusive, so to speak. And so that's just something just to put on a radar and say, okay, that will be part of the system. And the third big change is that last year they changed our math test. And so it's all new standards, all new math tests. And so they said it won't count in the accountability system. And so math was totally taken out. And so you say, well, so putting math back in there has a couple changes. The obvious is that you've got a whole nother subject in there. But the quirk that really matters here is that the final index, index 4, says, did you get to that final standard on 2 or more tests? Okay, so last year our elementary campuses only had a reading test. So they only had to do it on 1 test. But this year they've got 2 tests, and they have to do it on both tests. And so you can see that that's going to be a harder thing for our elementary campuses. So again, we're paying a little bit more attention to our elementary campuses than we did, 5 years ago. We just said, well, those elementary campuses are rocking, they're recognized, they're getting exemplary, they're getting awards and recognitions. Now, because of the way the accountability system works, we're paying a little bit closer attention to, maybe we have to pay a little bit more, we have to be a little bit more deliberate in some of our conversations, making sure that certain groups aren't being left behind. So I gave like a color-coded risk last time, and so this is an updated version of it. So kind of based on our current status, I've taken a couple of the campuses off of orange, which was the most at risk, and so today I'm only leaving Salado in that orange group. And so they met accountability last year in all 4 indexes, but none of them by more than 3 points. And so on a 100-point scale, they met it by 3 points or less in all 4 areas. And so when you get all those changes we talked about, right? You've got the star A and the higher standard that we think might be coming in. Then Salado is a little bit more vulnerable than some of the other campuses because they were a little closer last year. Harmony moved back a level from orange to yellow based on our data. It's really the thing we're watching most carefully at Harmony is index 4. And so, did the kids get to the final standard on both reading and math this year? And is it enough kids that are on track for college? So that's the thing, if you remember a couple of years ago, that briefly Harmony was labeled improvement required, and we challenged it, and they upheld our challenge. They said, no, you're right, they shouldn't have been improvement required. And so it's that same issue. It was an index 4 score that was lower. Oakcrest, we're watching Oakcrest because of index 1, and so that's just overall passing. And so last year they were sitting at a 61 and you needed a 60. And so they made it by 2 points. And so when we factor in star A and the higher standard, we think it could make them a little bit more vulnerable, that they could be more on the edge a little bit. So we're watching them. We think they're going to make it, but we'll just kind of keep an eye out. Pecan Valley is going to be like Harmony. It's about that 4th index. So did you get to the final standard on both reading and math? And do we have enough? And then the rest of them, green, there's just kind of the way the accountability system works. Heritage and Legacy are very likely, I believe, to make it. And Highland Forest, I think, is not as vulnerable to those indexes as Harmony and Pecan Valley are based on our local data. And then I kind of called it the clear color last time. And so the high school, just based on the early projections and the literature that they publish on what they say the system will look like, the high school looks like they'll make it. John Glenn is well on track to make everything, and Sinclair is on track to make everything. And so any more questions before I turn it over?
Well, I just have a small comment, but what I'm hearing you say, what I'm hearing you say is that we're keeping our eye on that.
Yes.
And I know that doesn't mean you're just looking. I mean, I know there's a plan to watch, and I think that's what's important. We can get carried away if we start looking at those numbers and stuff and start thinking we're not doing well or whatever, and that can be self-defeating for everybody that has anything to do with the education of these children. But watching, keeping your eye on it, monitoring it, having a plan, certainly a worthwhile plan to go on it and not get caught up in all of the going, on back and forth, but actually having a plan and watching them and being able to support and help.
Trying to empower the campuses to just be aware, like there's some populations, so that those highest achieving kids are really what's going to get you in trouble. So both Harmony and Pecan Valley have been much more explicit the last 2 years at targeting what are we doing to ensure that the highest kids are growing as well. And so in the old accountability system, you weren't rewarded for the highest kids growing. But now, we're saying, okay, it's not about the test, it's about everything we're doing, making sure that they're going and growing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate that.
Yes, please.
Wake up, sorry.
So what I'd like to talk a little bit about now is just a school-wide tiered behavior model. We talked a lot about this, trustees, when we talked about life skills and redirection, and we allocated some staff earlier this year to meet some needs. And so that was all part of the system that was going to be evaluated this spring, as it is every year, to determine the degree to which we're actually implementing the model that we have. Because, we talked a lot about throwing staff at a problem isn't necessarily the solution if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so we did determine that we had some staff deficiencies, but we've also been working really hard to ensure that when we're handling behavior, at the classroom level, or even in the case of special needs students who have emotional disabilities, that are we following the model that we have to ensure that we can help them progress, keep them safe, keep staff safe, keep our schools safe, etc. And so I want Shannon, Dr. Fuller here, to talk a little bit about that and where we're at with implementation. We did get have our evaluation. Yeah, I said, Dr. Fuller, I clarified. Shannon's like, what? I didn't work on that project. Wake up. All right.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here with you all. So we have started implementing our tier behavior system about 3 years ago. And we know that teaching academics behavior is the same thing. So we have to teach behavior just like we teach academics. And if we want students to be academically successful, we know that they socially and emotionally need to have a good foundation and need to feel safe and make good decisions and come to school prepared and then feel good and comfortable while they're there. So in order to support that, we've been very systematic as a district. So we've put in district-wide expectations. It's probably part of the 3 Bs: safe, be respectful, be responsible. And so that's in every school, every grade level, and all the students can tell you what they are. 3 years ago, we started with our most severe settings. So we started with our tier 3 settings, implementing a behavior system to support that, looking at students' behavior, the function of their behavior, very individualized in that setting, specifically to that student, and then making a plan tailored to their needs to help make sure that they were successful. So teachers went through a lot of training, we implemented a lot of systems, gave some support, and so we've been working on that system for the past 3 years. Then last year, we went to tier 1, excuse me. Tier 1 is every student. So what is the behavior system? It's district-wide and school-wide. It touches every student. That's where our 3 Bs come in: be safe, be respectful, be responsible. We talked about what is every classroom going to be that's very positive. How are we going to reinforce the behavior that we want to see from our students and make sure that we lift that up and continue to reinforce it so we see and replicate those behaviors. We have our common areas. So if you go into the cafeteria, everybody knows what the expectation is there. In the bathrooms, they know what the expectation is, walking in the hallways, as well as in the classrooms. So every campus went through that plan, and they made their own. So everybody's, why they have the 3 Bs, it's still a little tailored to their student-specific needs, their culture and climate of their school. There are threads that are common, but then they're very individualized. And so everybody went through that, and then we implemented that last year. Then this year, we looked at tier 2. So it's those kids that are still in tier 1, but maybe need a little bit of extra support. They are having a little bit of behavior difficulties, not severe enough to be in a tier 3 setting, a self-contained or behavior unit, but they just need a little bit more love and support. And so we worked on that this year, identifying who those kids are, putting systems in place to help them, teaching social skills so that we made sure that those kids, along with getting their academic lessons, also get behavior lessons in social and emotional, so we can help support and teach that behavior as ongoing, and then track that behavior over time so we can also see what's going on. So, do you want me to go over the data specifically, or just the plan?
Yeah, just.
So that's kind of where we are. We're going to meet with everybody at the end of, May to help them. They got their program review. So we went over how's everybody doing right now in all 3 tiers about a month ago. And so they have all their data right now, and then we're going to pull everybody together at the end of May, and they're going to revise their plans based on their data for next year.
So on one hand, the science behind behavior supports what is very logical and makes sense, and that is, if you want to see certain types of behaviors from kids at scale in your schools, then you have to identify what those optimal behaviors are, and then you have to teach them, and then you have to identify kids when they're falling short and make sure they get the additional support so that they can exhibit the appropriate behavior. So like, behavior just doesn't happen because you punish kids, right? And this board knows that. There may be consequences for behavior, but there has to be an educational orientation of what do we do next to help that kid learn to make better choices and better decisions in the future and behave more appropriately. Because we're getting these kids ready for life, right? And so, for us, that just makes sense, right? It's the right thing to do. And the science supports it. So I just wanted to point that out. So before we move on, I also wanted,
Can I add one thing?
yeah, sure.
So we have this year, one of the things that we did is we started reporting behavior separately from academics. So students get a behavior grade in addition to an academic grade. So it's centered around the 3 Bs: be safe, be respectful, be responsible. So you can go into the grade book, you can see how students are doing academically, and then you can see how they're doing behaviorally, and it's also put on the report card. So you see two different grades.
They see the behavior grade and the academic grade.
Yes, sir.
And the academic grade, the behavior grade will not affect the academic grade as far as honor roll, am I right?
Correct. It's reported separately.
So just to point out an example, you could have a kid, maybe he doesn't complete an assignment, or he doesn't turn something in on time. His failure to demonstrate that he has learned academically is not an option. So he's going to have to do that. But he's also got some responsibility issues, right? That he needs to learn how to be more responsible. So academically, the teacher's going to base his academic grade not on 10 points off because it was late, or 0 because,
Right.
or 50 because he didn't turn all the way in. But his responsibility grade is going to show that he's got issues. And if it's not at the standard, then there should be a comment there from the teacher telling the parent and the kid, hey, time management's an issue, or he's not using his time wisely in class, or he's not getting his assignments in on time, and so he's falling behind. We need to work on that, put a plan in place. And so we're pretty proud that we've moved in that direction pre-K to 5 this year. And so those parents see both. And so we're no longer seeing the kid who's just a teacher's pet, like Ashley was. Who does everything the teacher says, how the teacher says it, and most of which were with their classmates because they did group assignments or it was homework, which they all did in the cafeteria together, they turned in. And so they got all these straight A's, but didn't necessarily know what she really learned in algebra, right? Well, now she's going to have to really learn, even though she's a great charismatic young kid who does everything the teacher wants, apples and all, she's going to have to really learn it, right? And her behavior on the other side has also got to be top-notch, safe, respectful, and responsible. So it's just tougher standard, and it's tougher for teachers and students both. So it's pretty clear now. You can't average together, irresponsibility with, well, you're a genius in math, but you don't turn your stuff in time, you're failing. You got to take math again. Or vice versa. You're terrible at math, but you turn everything in on time, copy off of smart kids in the cafeteria, and you got an A. So it's just a different standard. And again, the principle is, like academics, you got to identify that appropriate behavior you want to see as you prepare kids for their future, and you got to teach it, and you got to report progress on it and put plans in place when they're not meeting the standard. So that's just an important part to point out there. It's a big part of what we're doing. In fact, we just kind of presented that plan at Trinity, to be honest, as a district at a curriculum group, ISD. It was the end of the year talk is presenting what we were doing in that area. So we're pretty proud of that. A lot of work to be done yet.
Also, add on that, and just from the safety side, that what we've done through the 3 tiers of behavior and the training that's been provided, are a number of severe injuries have gone down. That doesn't mean we aren't having a few from time to time, and we can certainly it's an ongoing learning process. But I think it has paid off in that regard as well as just overall behavior. I think is improved.
Oh, that's good to hear that.
So we've got probably two more topics to touch on. Ashley will touch on one, and Taffy's going to touch on the other. So we'll turn it over to Taffy in a second. But I want to say that like teaching behavior is the right thing to do. It makes sense. Taffy's going to talk a little bit about college readiness and career readiness and kind of what we're doing there. One of the things I've been sharing with the community in the bond presentations is that if the bond were to pass and we were able to take over John Glenn as an expansion of the high school, we have some really good opportunities to expand career and technology programs because the reality of it is, and I know that everybody in here agrees, it's one thing to get a kid to graduate from high school and go on into their future book smart. But it's another thing for kids to have employable skills, like they've got skills with certifications that they can get hired in a meaningful job, and or they work well with people, they show up on time, they do what they're supposed to do, right? They got common sense. And so we feel like the end game, when we look back at our profile of a graduate that we created, the community created, is pretty straightforward, that we want kids to not only be advanced academically, but we want them to be employable, we want them to have common sense, and we want them to go out there and have all the options in the world available to them. So we've done a lot of work this past year, plan to do a lot of work in the future around really what is college and career readiness and how do we do that for every kid. Because academics alone, book smart alone is not going to do it for kids in this economy.
Well, that was an excellent intro to what I'm going to talk about. We have that second performance objective that Jonathan did talk about that's related to college and career readiness, and that one is tied to that one measure in STAR. But there's so many more things involved in college and career readiness, so We've been doing some really exciting things this year working on that. We've done a little bit of restructuring with staff. So we have some staff members that are focusing on getting internships for our kids, working on industry certifications for our kids, looking at advanced academics, working with our highest level kids and getting them to move up. We have a staff member working on business and community partnerships. So some of the things that we've got in the works this year, we do have a new program we've got some kids working on called ACE. It's Architecture, Construction, and Engineering. We've got a group of kids that are assigned to mentors in the industry, and they work with them throughout the whole year, and they have worked together as a team on a project to where they would do the plans, they would do cost estimates, all of those different things that go into a construction project. And then I believe it's Thursday, they're going to go and present this to people in the industry. It's not a contest or anything, but it's to present their work based on their work with their mentor that they've done throughout this whole year. So that's one thing we've done. We've really expanded our work with SA Works this year. Their organization in town that involves business members. ISD is a really big part of it. School districts are part of it. They had a big job shadowing event back in February. We had quite a few kids participate in that. We had kids go to Coca-Cola and to Colt. And then also another big thing SA Works is focusing on is trying to get summer internships for kids that are really focused on their career pathway. And so I'm really proud of us. I believe we're the only school district that jumped on board and said we also in our district are going to offer some summer internship opportunities for our kids. So we actually have those job postings on the SA Works website as well as through our personnel department, and we have 7 internships that we're going to be offering to students. Hopefully one's in our district, that's our plan, in our various different departments that run throughout the summer. We have social media, we have security and the police department. We have through our maintenance, construction, those departments, a couple of child nutrition, and then we even have a couple of positions for kids that are interested in teaching so they can intern in our summer programs. So that's another exciting thing we've got going on. We're also looking at, we've been meeting with a couple of different organizations that we can expand some of our opportunities for our kids for some programs that they can be in while they're in high school and get a certification before they leave high school. And so they could either go straight to work, or they could go to work and work part-time and still go to college, or they can go straight to college. So we've been in conversation with a couple of other companies. I don't want to go into it right now because we don't have it all settled yet, but we've been working with that. Our new CTE specialist has really been working hard with our career tech teachers, looking at different possibilities for industry certifications to expand what we already have. We already had several certifications, but we're looking at expanding that, hoping to get some really valid licenses for kids to work on in all of our CTE programs. We've been really strong in some of them, but some of them they didn't really have a certification that they could get as they exited the program. So we're working on expanding that to where we would have it in all of our areas. We also, we're working on this work skills boot camp, and I have a little flyer if you want to look at it. This is one of the projects that our college and career counselor has been working on. We've got in May a program we're going to have for our seniors to where they can go through a series of sessions and work on soft skills. And we've got industry partners coming in to teach some of those sessions. We're really excited about it. Like I said, it's going to be the outgoing seniors will participate in it. And you can see on the flyers some of the partners that we have coming to present these sessions. So in addition to all the skills that they're learning in their career tech classes, we keep hearing from industry that kids are not coming out of high school with the soft skills. So we're going to at least start out with this. It's our first attempt to do something like this. So we're really excited about that. That's all the things we're doing related to career and tech and looking at getting kids workforce ready. We also believe we need to look at what we're doing for our advanced kids, our top kids. So we have put together a GT task force, and there are school district employees, parents, all of those are involved, a wide variety at different levels, and we're really looking at the programs we have available for our advanced academic students. Our most recent thing we did was look at other districts with exemplary programs to see what they have in place. And so our next step is to take some ideas from that, and we're going to put together a 3-year plan so that we can have some improvement in that area also. So I really see college and career readiness, it's kind of the big umbrella over everything, because that's why we're here. That's our goal, is to get the kids, when they leave us, to be college and career ready, whatever their choice is after post-secondary. So we've worked really hard to put some things in place this year so that it's more likely that kids will have that.
Speaking of college readiness, how was Judson chosen to, the kids that are going in next year, they're going to get college credits? How was that school chosen? Are you familiar with that?
I'm talking about the early college high school, and actually I believe they're doing early college school-wide in all the high schools. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I think I read something a couple of weeks ago that some kind of way Judson School District was granted something while the kids, when they come out of high school, they go already have their college, so many college credit. I don't know how they were chosen.
It's an early college high school.
That's what it is. Okay, how is that? They just picked Judson for some reason?
Well, there is an application process to have that specific designation. However, you can still offer opportunities for college credits, which we do, without having that designation.
Without having that designation.
Yes.
Okay, so we can have the application for that also.
And I believe that we have a few kids in our church that go to Judson and have, one girl is graduating this year after having been out of high school 2 years, so, yeah.
Okay.
Several years ago, I was invited to go to UTSA for a graduation from our kids. Our kids graduated from there with as little as 3 hours. Others got almost 2 years worth of college work. And this is not just East Central. There were several schools. I mean, the whole convocation center was full. The whole floor was full of students. And I was happy to be there to watch these kids get these credits. Whereas we had to work for them from the get-go, these kids are getting them while they're still in high school. Some had 2 years of school already in the books before they even received their high school diploma. And I haven't seen it since. I don't know.
So we at one point had an early college designation. We don't anymore, but we still offer the kids dual credit, and they can do it in several ways. We have our own teachers that do dual credit. We have adjunct professors from Alamo colleges come to us and teach the kids. We also have distance learning, so they have lots of opportunities with dual credit. And we also have really expanded our AP offerings in recent years, so they have that opportunity also.
Yeah, that's what okay. So we do offer some college, okay.
And our kids are being successful at the AP test.
Yes.
Very well, much more than they used to.
Yeah, we've seen some improvement.
Yeah.
And then we also still do have the AVID program, which is focusing on the middle of the road students and helping them get college ready. And we've got that now in an elementary, 2 intermediates, and both middle schools and high schools. So that's another group that's really working on college.
Those kids that are in the culinary school program out here, and when they finish high school, do they have any type of certification, certificate or something?
So they do have what's called the serve set. If they go through the internship part, the culinary 2, they end up with a Serve Safe Manager certification. In the first year, they get just a food handler certification.
Okay.
In the second year, they get a manager certification.
Okay.
For Serve Safe.
Any questions about anything? All right, so the last topic is just organizational health. And I'll just have Ashley kind of bring us up to speed, but as you guys know, we have a goal of getting feedback from everybody in the organization so that, you know, if things aren't working very well, if we don't ask, how are we going to know? And if you ask and they tell you, what are you going to do? And so in an effort to continuously improve the health of our organization, we've implemented a battery of surveys that are anonymous, but specific to campuses and or departments. Again, with the idea that we'll set some goals for improvement and take some steps to improve conditions for staff across the district, as well as for service of our departments to staff. So, Ashley?
Okay, so what is organizational health? Organizational health, it means how good do people feel about coming to work at eCentral? How good do our students feel about coming to school at eCentral? Do they feel like their contribution is valuable? Do they feel like their manager, their supervisor values them as a person? Do they feel like they have opportunities for growth? Do they feel like they have a voice in our direction? Do they believe in the management? Do they believe in the direction of the district? So all of those things we want to measure, we want to ask, we want to find out, because it's just common sense that if somebody feels good about coming to work every day, they're going to work harder. So we want to make sure that we are listening, we're asking employees and students, and we're listening to their responses. John Maxwell uses an Afghan proverb in one of his leadership books that says that if you're leading and no one's following, you're just taking a walk. And we as an organization, we want to make sure that we're not just taking a walk. We want to make sure that everybody's with us, that we are supporting the people in the field the best way that we can. And the best way to do that is to ask them how they feel about what we're doing and where we can improve. So survey responses are collected twice a year from staff. We do a district survey in January, February, and those surveys are on campuses. They're also through departments and to principals regarding how departments are doing. We also give an outside survey called the Workplace Dynamics Survey. We did that last year in April, and we'll do that again this year in May. And that's where we got our top workplace designation from the Express News. And we got a lot of really great feedback beyond being a top workplace. We got great feedback that helped us create goals surrounding culture and climate on each campus for the district, and to create performance goals. So this year, so that you know, we have addressed concerns brought to light by both student and parent surveys, responses regarding employee benefits, length of school day, and communication. Those were the three things that were brought to light in our first surveys last year that we could really improve upon. And so we have worked this year to do that. Students are surveyed annually using a district survey, and they basically give feedback like, the work that I do is challenging. My teacher believes that I can learn. I believe that I can learn. Things like that. I feel safe. I feel safe in the restroom. I feel safe in the cafeteria. I know who to go to if I have a problem. Those types of questions are the things that we ask students. And then the principals, whenever they sit down with Mr. Toscano to review their goals, they then create goals surrounding feedback from both the staff and the students for their campus culture and climate. And then we as a district team do the same for the district. Surveys that were issued to principals to assess the performance of all departments were, we got a response rate this year in February, or in January, a response rate of 91%. Because I know, Mr. Bryant, you had asked, well, what was the percentage of return? Well, 91% of the surveys were responded to. When Workplace Dynamics Survey was administered last year, we had 68% of our 1,318 employees respond, so it was approximately 890 responses. Our survey completion rate in January for our campuses, I have a little chart, so if y'all want to look at that, you can, but our responses were pretty good from staff. I think the lowest was 55%, the majority were in the 70s, a couple in the 80s, a couple in the 90s, with John Glenn having the highest percentage at 97% of their staff members filling out their survey. So it's with the staff surveys, we get a really good response, and so we feel pretty good about the information that we collect and then the goals that we're able to set and address so that staff members are happy about coming to work. Our goal to find out, and then students, I'm sorry, let me talk about students. So our student response rate, we had asked all the campuses to get a 10% sampling of their students, and we asked them to please get different demographics. So we want some of the kids that might be serviced through special ed, some of the kids who might be serviced through GT, some of your kids who are in just any class, some of your kids who might be in trouble, some might, who maybe are in every club and organization. So we want a good cross-section of your campus. And we had almost every campus met that goal. One campus fell short by 2 percentage points with 8% of student responses, but the rest, majority were beyond 15%, with most of them more than that. A couple of them had over 30%, one with 42%. So they're getting that good cross-section of how do kids feel about coming to school. Do they feel challenged by their work? Do they want to come to school? And again, that's what principals are using to set those goals for their culture and climate on their campus. The goal that we had set district-wide last year was to have 100% of campuses and 100% of departments surveyed by January, and we did meet that goal. Additionally, our goal for the workplace dynamic survey that we'll administer in May was that we would have 80% of our staff respond, and we won't know until May, but I have high hopes that we're going to meet that goal, which would mean that about 1,054 of our employees will fill out the survey. And if that means I have to go to the bus garage with the laptop and make people fill it out whenever they finish their bus route, and that's what Sam and I are going to go do, right, Sam? My partner in crime, and I need Chromebooks. So additionally, campuses do send out parent surveys annually that helps with their campus improvement plan, data and setting those goals for their campus improvement plan. But we feel very strongly, again, it's just common sense that if we don't ask, we can't address issues, we can't set goals without knowing what do people want, what do they believe, what do they feel like we can do to be better. And it's part of that continuous improvement and our organizational health. It's very important to our mission to educate all students. Thank you.
Awesome. All good, really good information.
Did you have some updates or information you wanted to share, Judy, about
The fund balance, and yes, I'll be glad to. I'm kind of glad this is a small group because I usually don't talk. And Jim kind of talks for all of us, so, which is good, so.
You the talking head. Use the brains.
Anyway, so.
I remember that.
We knew that all along.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate that. You're smarter than I thought.
We were lucky, we were very blessed to have a very good fund balance per our audit of last year of over $24 million. And we were able to have a balanced budget like y'all wanted and for this year, and we have succeeded in that. We did have 3 budget amendments that we took to the board this year, and we used that money from fund balance, and that came out to about $2,734,000. And the budget amendments, one was for facility improvements, one was for the band uniforms, and the last one that y'all just approved was the Function 41 for the election and the time clocks. So does that mean that we're going to use $2.7 million of our fund balance that we had in August last year? No, not at all, because we are always blessed that our budget stewards are very diligent in not spending all their monies. And so we feel like this year we'll could have a possible, and I am very conservative, 2% not expended, which would mean that we could have an additional $1,562,000 to take away from the expense we have of $2,734,000. So we could have a possible fund balance of $22,914,000 at the end of August, which means we could have a reduction in fund balance of $1.172 million this year. Is it going to be that? No. I think that we're not going to be going into fund balance to that degree because of a few things that have happened. One thing is that we've done really well on collection of our taxes, and I think we'll even collect more taxes than we proposed in our budget. And the other thing that has been really good is that our attendance rate is higher this year through the first 6 weeks of 95.28% attendance. And so all of those things help to increase your funding and will keep you from having to hit into your fund balance. So I don't think, I'm really optimistic that if we go into fund balance for this year at the end of August, it will be for a very small amount, and we might not even go into fund balance because, as we all know, fund balance is not cash balance. Fund balance is your accrued payroll. Fund balance is what you still have on the books for taxes to be collected, what you're owing for accounts payable. So it's a lot of numbers, but I feel like we will be very close to of having almost maybe the same fund balance we had at the end of August, or just maybe a little bit that we have to eat into our fund balance, which will help on the projects that are wanting to happen.
Let us know, and Sam and I will go door to door to collect those taxes. Right, Sam?
Sam, I should maybe getting you over your head. Be real careful with that.
Judy is very conservative quite often on her projections. I think they'll be closer to a balance or possibly even a little positive, not much, but it'll depend on how it all hits. And it is a number that's, you draw a line on, as of August 31, this is what it looks like, and then you start all over again. But for the audit that you'll get a report on in either November, December timeframe, I would be surprised if it's not very close to even. That would be a little bit more, is what I'm projecting. But she's one that keeps me out of trouble by being conservative, so I would listen to her more than me.
That was good information.
Good information. Thank you. And just recall your board goal was, hey, we've got an excessive fund balance. We've done a great job over the years, and so in the last 3 years, you guys have really been committed to capital improvements along the way, which we've also committed to, should the bond pass, some of those capital improvements over the scope of work being done coming out of fund balance, which going down the road that we've been consistently going down, we believe that we can do that and still maintain that 2.5 months of operations cost of around $16.5 million. So that's the goal you guys set in that area.
I like the way you use the word blessed. It's really not being blessed, it's really working hard. And we're blessed that y'all are working really hard. So we appreciate the effort that goes into that. I know that it's not an easy thing to do, but it sure pays off in the long run. And we'll see some of that here shortly with the work that's going to happen out of fund balance. It'll be an exciting time.
Did everyone vote?
Sir?
Did everyone vote? Already voted?
I did. I want it to pass.
I'm going to do it in the morning.
When we're voting here at the high school, 8 to 6.
Oh,
8 to 6 through the 3rd.
Through the 3rd. They're not open on Sunday, but they're open on the other days.
10 to 6. On Saturday,
10
it's
to
10 to
6
6,
on-
not 8 to 6.
Yeah,
That's right.
remember
10 to 6 on Saturday.
Remember the infamous words of Lyndon Johnson. Vote early, vote often.
Well, I'm a true Democrat. I know my dad's passed away, but I know how he would have voted, so I'll vote for him.
On that note, and many do, okay? And many do. So I think we've heard some really good things tonight about what's going on in the district. The goals that we set, the performance objectives that staff brought to us, and how those things are moving forward. You know, one of the recurring themes that I've heard tonight, and it's something that we've talked about over the year, is common sense. We want our kids to academically achieve, but we also want them to be able to get up, put the left shoe on the left foot and the right shoe on the right foot, and get to class on time, and to know how to take care of themselves. We talk about college and career readiness, but realistically, our college-bound students also need to be thinking about their career. It doesn't, and I hope nobody in here is a philosophy major. It doesn't do a whole lot of good to get a philosophy degree and end up selling shoes down at the mall. That doesn't do you a whole lot of good. You've lost 4 years of your life, you got a big college bill, and you're behind. So, you know, some of those things have to happen as well. So I would like to see us put that common sense out there even a little bit more. Y'all talk about it a lot. It needs to be talked about even more so that it becomes a recurring theme all the way up and down the organization. You know, what makes common sense? And unfortunately, common sense is the least common of the senses. But it's something that you need more, really, than most of the other senses. So, you know, my challenge to you would be, how do you incorporate those kind of things in our performance objectives? How do you drive that common sense down through the organization and make it be thought of at the same level that we talk about exceptional learning environment? Because those two things shouldn't be mutually exclusive. They should go hand in hand. Our janitorial staff, come to work, dressed to go to work. Don't wear your tuxedo to clean the rooms. Be dressed to work. Do the things that you're supposed to do. I think of everybody in the district as being an educator. Now, I know that my daughter would have been offended by that because she thought of herself as an educator. She didn't think of the janitorial staff necessarily as an educator until I reminded her one day that the janitorial staff teaches those kids how they're supposed to go to work, what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to take care of their lives. And so they lead more by example than academically instructing in a classroom. Our building mechanics need to set the example for our students. Don't walk by the piece of paper that's laying on the floor. Stop and pick it up. I guarantee you that if you do that 10 times, there's going to be one kid who notices it and they'll pick up a piece of paper. So that leading by example, that common sense, is something that we really, really need our kids to understand. Mr. Toscano said it a while ago, it doesn't do any good to send them out of here book smart if they don't have common sense. College education is great. It's going to get you nothing without a work ethic. I promise you that. A work ethic will make you successful. Ask Bill Gates. Does not have an earned college degree. Has a number of degrees that were awarded to him, but he never earned a college degree. He's a college dropout. Pretty successful guy. He had a work ethic. He was able to instill that work ethic down through his organization. How do we do that in our organization? How do you get in the door in the morning? Do you come to work happy? Or do you come to work, I'm okay. I don't want you here, it's okay. If you're okay, your students are going to be okay, and okay doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it out in the world, doesn't cut it in the workplace, it shouldn't cut it in our classroom. Most of y'all have heard this story, some of you may not have. I spent about 3 years in the hospital, and I saw a lot of sick people walking around pushing a four-wheel pole that had 15 or 16 bags hanging off of it. And if you stopped those people and said, "How you doing?" every one of them would have said, "I'm doing great." Great's not good enough. If they're doing great, why can't I be better than them? And that's the attitude that we ought to take into our classroom. That's the attitude that we ought to teach our kids. Great isn't good enough. Look at your situation. Deal with what you're doing. And it's a lot of common sense. A lot of common sense. Vic talked about teaching our kids and not focusing on things. And I think that that's what we're doing. We are not focusing myopically on the STAR test. We're looking more holistically at our students. Are our students successful at the end of the day? Not on the STAR test. Because I will guarantee you, you can ask what's 2 plus 2 18 different ways. And some of the kids are going to get it right, and some of the kids are going to get it wrong. I like to think about, Vic, when I think about a science test, and how do you word something for a student that may not be extremely proficient in English, but might be very proficient in Spanish. There is no word in the Spanish language for beaker. The closest word in the Spanish language for beaker is flask. I put whiskey in my flask. How do you ask a kid a science exam, a science question that wants to talk about a beaker when they think of whiskey? How do you ask kids in Texas a question about what they call a porch when you're from New England and you call it a stoop? We have tanks down here. They have ponds in other places. So where are those questions coming from? What are the questions designed to do? And we're not doing that anymore. And God bless your pea-picking hearts for not doing that anymore. There's more to an education than the STAR test. And so it's absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Some of the things that we're doing, people don't know about. The ACE program. There's not a lot of folks that know about that. And those are the things that make a bunch of our students very, very successful. Very successful. We don't hang on one thing. So, you know, you can call it blessed if you want to. I call it good old sweat. And y'all are sweating. And thank you. Well, we've done some things recently, you know, that folks may not really pay a whole lot of attention to, but we're at 10,000 students now. And we're not the biggest school district in San Antonio, we're not the smallest, but we've begun to realize that when you hit that level, you got to do things differently. We now have an athletic director and a head football coach. Those are the things that you have to do. Our special ed population has gotten bigger. We increased the staff in that special ed population. So, you know, if you really stop and think about those things, it's common sense. It's just plain common sense. But a lot of people don't see that happening. They don't understand that y'all are driving common sense down through the organization. And you know, maybe focusing a little bit on that will help those people come up with their own goals that make things more commonsensical. Do the right thing. You know, I always talk about 4 things. Always do a good job. Build effective relationships. Take advantage of your opportunities, and always do the right thing. If you do those 4 things, you're going to be in pretty good shape. None of them is more important than the other. They're all kind of co-equal. But if you concentrate on those 4 things, and I'm pretty good at 4. I don't do very good at 7, you know. 7 habits of successful people and all that stuff, you know. I'm more of the keep it simple, stupid kind of guy. So I kind of deal with 4, but those things encompass all 4 of those things. Just, you know, it's some common sense. My dad used to tell me, boy, if you're on time, you're late. You know, the people who get ahead at work are the folks who are there early and they stay late. May not be 2 hours early, but they don't walk in at 8:30 and they don't leave at 4:30 if you're working 8 to 5. So, I mean, those are just the things that you have to do. So I applaud y'all for what you've done this year. In my perspective, it's been a very, very successful year. I know it's not done yet. I know y'all don't want to sit on your laurels. You never do. You're always pushing, and that's fine. You know, if you want to, if our campuses want to set a goal to be an exceptional or exemplary campus, more power to them. Bless them. But that's not our goal. And I hope that this board never has that as a goal. I hope that the goal of this board is always to have successful students at the end of the day. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, I think, and you know, I talk about common sense a lot. That's why I was teasing it. It's just so basic. It's just not even funny. But it also gives you an opportunity to step back a little bit and then have a different, you know, have your perspective right about what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
That common sense allows everybody to be able to take that step back and look. And so, because if we're not careful, we can get caught up in a whole lot of different things and not in the direction that we really want to go and say that we were going to go. So,
We're an academic institution, and you want to focus on academics. But I will tell you, a couple of years ago, I was very involved in the P16 Council because Bartell Zachary was chairing that, and he was taking money out of his own pocket to fund that. And I went to a meeting one day, and Bartell was talking about college. And after the meeting, because I would never embarrass the man in public, I took him aside and I said, Mr. Zachary, your workforce is 87% non-college people. If everybody in your organization has a college degree, you're going to go broke. You've got welders who have a high school education, who work 6 months out of the year, who make $200,000 a year. How can you say that person's not successful? They work 6 months a year, and the other 6 months of the year they go fishing, they go hunting, they drive their boat on the lake, all of those kind of things. So, how is that person not successful? Now, they can hang upside down 12 hours a day with their tongue at a 90-degree angle, welding stainless steel or aluminum. Very, very successful people. Very successful people. They don't have a college degree. And the next year, the goal of P16 became college and career ready. They abandoned the myopic focus on college because it doesn't get you anywhere. I don't want a plumber that's got a college degree in physics. I can't afford it. I want a plumber who can do plumbing. I don't care if his pants are a little low or not. That's a different job.
On that note.
I mean, Pat, are we on the right track here? Have y'all heard the right things? Do we need to keep doing the things we're doing?
I said, when I first got on the board, because I didn't come from a huge, college background, my parents neither, it was all
I meant to
about,
talk to you about that.
I know, it was all career stuff, you know what I mean? And I always worked in the career setting, and then my mom and I opened the Early Learning Center and all that kind of thing. And to me, even before I got on the board, but even more afterwards, I did say out loud that I felt like it was important that every student that walked across the stage, that diploma meant something, whether it was I'm going to college or I'm going to work. But I've got this, and this means that I can do, one or the other. And I really think that's what you're saying, that it needs to mean something to every student, regardless of which path they take. The path has got to be something that they're excited about, that's going to motivate them, and that they can make a living off of. So I agree. I'm totally with you.
I agree with y'all. So made some good points too about being in different parts of the country. I recall when I first went to college out in New Mexico, Albuquerque, my professor had me to write a paper on how to fix a flat tire. And the first thing I said was pull the car off to the shoulder of the road. He didn't grade the paper any further than that because he didn't know what the shoulder of the road was. That's what I call it. What the hell does he call it?
Obviously not a shoulder.
But he didn't, they use a different term up there.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't create any Because he thought I was trying to be funny, I guess. So he really didn't understand what I mean, so he wouldn't grade me. So, and being in different parts of the country, use different words, and before I take the STAR test, and like you're talking about those different things, that can be very confusing. Because I guess that was confusing to him when I said pull off on the shoulder, you know.
You know, as we were talking, I've been looking at this and looking at this, and the thing that's so beautiful about this is it says the Central College and Career Readiness presents, and this is for any person that's graduating, no matter where they go from that point, once they graduate, you know, anyone that, this can fit any person, and I think that's really exciting. I love all of the different groups that are contributing to that. I think that's really great.
Yeah, I need to talk to you about this.
I think this
Army
kind of
thing.
speaks to us that it says.
The Army thing's gotta go.
There we go.
Steve.
So, you know, what I'm hearing is that we're on the right path. I hope that the conversation that we've had tonight will help you all move forward with setting some performance objectives, where we want to go. Where in our minds, our community wants our kids to go. You know, we want them to be successful. And there's different measures of success. It's not the STAR test, as Vic spoke very well to this evening. It's not the STAR test. We've got assessments. Y'all know what you're teaching. How do the kids learn that? Where can they move forward? And if, you know, I wish more of the population knew that the STAR test was designed so that 50% of the kids pass and 50% fail. You know, if you look at that and then you take us, where we stand in the STAR test, we're doing really, really well when you stop and think about those things. The things that we need to improve on are the things that y'all have put in place, the iStation and the SMI. Is there still a Texas Learning Index, a TLI? No? No TLI anymore. There used to be something that measured growth in a year, you know, with the TLI. That was always something that, you know, that I could kind of hang your hat on, because, you know, a national assessment or a state assessment really doesn't tell you much because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But those growth instruments tell you. You know, if you can tell that a kid starting the second grade is at 2.2, when they get through, they ought to be at 3.2. Or coming in the next year, they ought to be at 3.2. So the growth is important, especially at the elementary level. They don't have a good foundation, they're in trouble. And we're in trouble, for sure. Anybody have anything else?
Sir?
Hi. I mean, if we're not on the right path, now's the time to talk about it, so that staff can bring us back.
No, I'm happy with everything that I've heard tonight. I really am. It's a lot of good information. And it's also helpful because I get asked a lot of these things, you know, from parents and out in the public, and I like to be able to speak to them, whether it's finance or, you know, the stuff that you talked about or the stuff that you talked about. I have it here on a little agenda. I have lots of notes. So I do take lots of notes because people do ask you questions. And like one thing that I just wanted to tell Roland that I really like is when you, that you, all of these things are pieces that we put together to tell a whole story. That we're not going to play the state accountability game, but we're growing readers and we're growing thinkers, and I literally will take that back out to the public or to the community and tell them that, because a lot of people frown, and the perception is that we are teaching strictly to the test, and parents are so over it, and the kids are knowledgeable enough about it to be over it themselves, and so when I get to write things down like this and I get to go share and take the notes of things that they said, I can share that with the community, and I think it gives the parents a hope that things aren't exactly like they have been, or, you know, there's a change in the air, there's a change coming, and we are part of that here in this district, so I'm real happy with everything tonight.
Good deal.
I took notes.
Give it back to
You're not getting my notes.
Give him back his notes.
Yeah, give it his notes back. No, give it his notes
Yeah,
back.
did y'all hear that? I had a lot of practice because I took notes and I passed.
Yeah, give it
You
his
cheated
notes
on
back.
it. Did you hear that? He said it, finally.
Vic,
Give his notes
at the
back.
next meeting, it's your job to sit between us.
I'm so
Okay.
glad you said that.
If anybody-
I'm amazed at the proficiency of
I'll
what
raise
you can
my
write.
chest.
Okay, I think Roland asked earlier if everybody's voted. If you haven't voted, go vote. If you don't have your social media fired up, to everybody that you know who lives in the district about the bond issue, then do that. Remember, when you're on your social media, you're not at a school function, you're not on school property. You can tell people how you really feel. You don't just have to tell them, vote on the issue. So tell them what you want them to do. And make it personal. It'll be much better if you make that message personal.
What about if we go to the last bond, I went to Sinclair and sat in the driveway on my truck.
Yeah.
I had a t-shirt that said, vote yes for the bond, you know, I was like.
Yeah, absolutely
Whatever.
nothing wrong with
So, I
going and
mean,
working the polls.
yeah,
I'll let you know.
That's always a good idea, if they see it on your face and you can get.
But remember, wear your hat and sunscreen.
True.
Wear your hat and sunscreen.
True.
Main thing is get them to the polls.
Oh, yeah,
That's the
for
biggest,
sure.
I think that's the biggest
It's true, because
thing
it's
that
sad,
will
the
keep
numbers.
this from passing is not getting people
Sometimes.
out to vote.
Yeah.
In addition to sending all of y'all an email last night asking you to get on your social media, I also sent the same thing to the committee members, the facilities committee members, and Roland had sent them earlier in the day all of the literature about the bond program. So, the only thing I can say is talk it up. The people who are going to vote no, I guarantee you will vote. The people who say, man, this makes more sense, may not go vote. And that's the danger in that.
Well, it was nice too, someone posted something about the culinary arts students, was that you actually? So what was really cool was, she was stating how they went to state with that beautiful cake and all. So I kind of hopped on there and used that as a catalyst to say, so glad that for the last bonded bill, we have this culinary arts department, all these student chefs now. So go vote, so we can continue to have, these kind of amazing things for our students. So I'm looking for things that you put out, and I'm gonna jump on top of them and share. So feel free to tag me in any new news or anything that you want out there, because I'll grab it.
Well, she'll assign Sam to do it, I'm sure.
Okay, Sam, by the way.
You can vote at any early voting
Right
location
now
in
you
Bear
can,
County.
absolutely.
During
You sure
early
can.
voting, if you have a few extra minutes and you happen to be on the north side of town and you're next to an early voting spot,
That's
tell
what I was-
people they can
that's what I
vote
was asking
anywhere in Bear
Yeah,
County
we vote early.
during
And-
early
And
voting.
your precinct, it'll pop up the bond on there.
Yes.
You can
Yeah,
vote.
'cause everybody can vote on it.
Sure.
But since I'm in this district,
Yes, sir.
it'll pop up.
People that it's at the bottom of the ballot.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
at the
that's
bottom.
another one.
It's
It's
at the bottom of the
actually
ballot.
Is it in the middle?
side.
So we, right. School
No,
board, school board
wait, wait,
elections.
wait,
It's ballot only two.
Yeah, there's I voted earlier, yeah, so there's
Is it in the middle?
there's a trustee for Alamo Colleges, one seat, and then the bond, side by side,
Okay, good.
2 items.
How'd you
So
vote?
fortunately, with this one, it's not at the bottom of the ballot.
Usually is.
Use the right hand.
Okay,
Well, because
with
usually
that,
for school board elections, it's at the bottom, very bottom. So
Usually
that's a
it
good
is.
point that
Yeah.
you brought that up.
Usually it is.
Okay.
Okay.
so with that, the chair will entertain a motion to
Where
adjourn.
it is on the.
We have a motion, we have a second, we're adjourned to
Yes,
unanimous
adjourned.
consent. Thank you, everybody.
Right. Don't leave the trash.
Oh, I know.
Yes.